Hello, everybody. Today I wanted to tell you about a story. This story is about how evolution had to invent spirituality to save consciousness. I will show you that due to Darwin's evolutionary laws, the latter is not possible without the first. So, as always, let's get right into it.
There was a moment when evolution had the completely insane idea to develop consciousness. Evolution realized, which is to say the process of mutation and selection, discovered that life forms equipped with consciousness actually weren't the fittest. Thereby, it needs to be pointed out that consciousness wasn't the thing evolution had aimed for. It only wanted to have cleverness. With cleverness, the evolution was able to form species, being able to use tools, perhaps even create them themselves. With cleverness, evolution could bring about entities, being able to help evolution with the even more complicated inventions necessary to really make the difference. Consciousness, on the other hand, merely came as a byproduct nobody really had wished for. One may say that consciousness was the true original sin. A sin, by the way, nobody should be blamed for but evolution. After all, if we all had stayed dumb like earthworms, the word sin would not even exist. This little piece of text is to be found in the book The World Formula, a late recognition of David Hilbert's stroke of genius, from Dr. Norbert Schwarzer, who also happens to be my father, by the way. There one finds, among other things, this interesting story about a godlike entity the author had characterized as a young nothingness. The story moves on as follows. On the first sight, it was good to have some kind of awareness or self-awareness, but within the cruel reality, it often became a disadvantage to feel, respectively, to consciously recognize what was going on and what life, or being consciously alive, really meant. So evolution had to learn it the hard way, that it could create sufficiently fit life forms who also have consciousness only when adding yet another piece to that recipe, and this was spirituality. Only spirituality allowed these self-aware and feeling life forms to put all those difficult or impossible to understand, often cruel or even unbearable experiences to a place in those bigger and bigger growing brains where it, meaning all the mess, cruelty and madness around, would hurt a bit less. Of course, in order to properly investigate this problem, one requires not only a completely new and most holistic understanding about evolution, but also about the psyche of sufficiently cognitively capable species, which not necessarily starts with the early human beings. These two aspects are presented in the two books I show you here. The references are given in the description to this video and at the end of my presentation. Currently, these books are only available as e-books, but they are planned for real publication with Jenny Stanford Publishing in the near future. For those among you who prefer to hold real books in their hands, we suggest the following book. It does contain all the basics to derive what is been presented in the two books I've shown you the slide before. But now we want to read on with our little story about how evolution had to invent spirituality. Of course, evolution never intended to make this storage for spiritual thoughts bigger than absolutely necessary. After all, evolution only wanted to create fitter life forms and had no interest whatsoever in bringing dim and passive believers into being. Thus, the organ of spirituality only ever was thought as a temporary storage room for everything which could not be explained straight away. Unfortunately, however, it turned out that explanations for some things took longer than the typical lifespan of such life forms. In fact, there were problems where even the typical lifespan of a whole species would not suffice. Thus, it happened that there was always something in these storages. They were never empty, and the bigger brains, keen to get also these unexplainable things explained, were extremely susceptible to all sorts of prophets who promised to have solutions, answers, hope. And so the epoch of shamans, priests, imams, gretas, and CO2 smellers, esoterics, astrologists, politicians, politic scientists, soul expert, climate apostlers, philosophers, and coffee shop owners had begun. But I do not want you to get me wrong. I am not far from criticizing evolution for its invention. On the contrary, because with spirituality, evolution gave us something else. It gave us hope. Thank you all for listening.